friends, it's your teen and tween librarian Rebecca, and we're back for another episode of Bedtime Stories. Last episode, we saw Axel and Professor Liedenbrock trying to figure out the key to discovering that's being said in that strange parchment, and to no avail. And we also learned that Professor Liedenbrock might have some anger management issues. Tonight, and this is not a spoiler because it's the name of the chapter, but Axel's left behind, and he may just discover how to read what that parchment is saying. But what does he do with that information? We'll find out in Chapter 4. Enjoy. Chapter 4. I find the key. "Has he gone?" cried Martha, running out of her kitchen as the street door slammed shut, shaking the whole house. "Yes," I replied, "well and truly gone." "Well, I never! And what about his dinner?" asked the old servant. "He won't have any." "And his supper?" "He won't have any." "What?" cried Martha, clasping her hands. "No, Martha, he's not going to eat a thing, nor is anyone else in this house. Uncle Liedenbrock is going to starve us all until he has succeeded in deciphering an old scrawl which is absolutely indecipherable." "Goodness gracious! You mean we shall have to starve to death?" I did not dare to admit that, with a man as determined as my uncle. This fate struck me as inevitable. The old servant, seriously alarmed, went back to her kitchen, groaning to herself. Once I was alone, the idea occurred to me of going to tell the whole story to Gräuben. But how could I leave the house? The professor might return at any moment. And what if he called me? What if he wanted to go on with this logographic riddle, which would have baffled even old Oedipus? And if I failed to answer his call, what might happen then? The wisest thing to do was to remain where I was. As it happened, a mineralogist at Besançon had just sent us a collection of siliceous geodes, which had to be classified. I set to work sorting, labeling, and arranging in their own glass case all these hollow stones, each with a set of little crystals inside it. But this task did not absorb the whole of my attention. The business of the old document continued to preoccupy me. My head was throbbing, and I felt overcome by a vague anxiety. I had a presentiment of some imminent catastrophe. After an hour's work, my geodes were all neatly arranged on their respective shelves. I then dropped into the old Utrecht armchair, my head thrown back and my arms dangling. I lit my long curved pipe, whose bowl was carved in the shape of a reclining naiad, and then amused myself by watching the carbonizing process. Every now and then, I pricked up my ears to hear whether anybody was coming upstairs. But no. Where could my uncle be at that moment? I imagined him running along beneath the splendid trees lining the Altona road, gesticulating wildly, dragging his stick along the wall, slashing at the grass, decapitating the thistles, and rousing the lonely storks from their sleep. Would he return in triumph or in discouragement? Which of the two would get the upper hand, he or the secret? Asking myself these questions, I picked up the sheet of paper covered with the incomprehensible series of letters I had written down, and I murmured over and over again, "What can it possibly mean?" I tried grouping these letters together to form words. It was impossible. Whether I put them together in 2s, 3s, 5s, or 6s, the result was still unintelligible. It was no clearer when I noticed that the 14th, 15th, and 16th letters made the English word ice, that the 84th, 85th, and 86th made the word sir. And in that body of the document, in the second and third lines, there were the Latin words rota, mutabile, ira, nec, and atra. Hang it, I thought. These last words would seem to suggest that my uncle was right about the language the document was written in. And there in the fourth line I can see another Latin word, luco, which means a sacred wood. It's true that in the third line there's the word tabiled, which is as Hebrew as it could be, and in the last line the words mar, arc, and mere are pure French. All this was enough to drive a fellow mad. 4 different languages in this ridiculous sentence. What connection could there possibly be between the words ice, sir, anger, cruel, sacred wood, changeable, mother, bow, sea? The first and last went together quite well. It was not at all surprising that in a document written in Iceland, there should be a mention of a sea of ice. But solving the rest of the cryptogram was quite another matter. As I struggled with this apparently insoluble problem, my brain got heated. My eyes blinked at the sheet of paper, and the 132 letters seemed to flutter around me, like those silver drops which float in the air about you when you get a rush of blood to the head. I was in the grip of a sort of hallucination. I was stifling. I needed air. Without thinking, I started fanning myself with the sheet of paper so that the back and front came alternately before my eyes. Imagine my surprise when, in one of those rapid movements, just as the back was turning toward me, I thought I could see some perfectly legible words, Latin words, such as cryptogram and terrestre. Light suddenly dawned upon me. These few clues were enough to give me a glimpse of the truth. I had found the key to the cipher. To understand the document, it was not even necessary to read it through the paper. It could be read out just as it was, just as it had been dictated to me. All the professor's ingenious theories were correct. He had been right about the arrangement of the letters, and right about the language in which the document was written. He had only needed a little something extra in order to read the Latin sentence from beginning to end, and chance had just given me that something. You may imagine how excited I was. My eyes misted over so that I could not see. I had spread the sheet of paper out on the table so that I only had to glance at it to possess its secret. At last, I succeeded in calming down. I forced myself to walk twice round the room in order to settle my nerves, and then dropped into the huge armchair. Now let's see what it says, I said to myself after taking a deep breath. I bent over the table and placed my finger on each letter in succession, and without stopping, without hesitating for a moment, I read out the whole sentence aloud. But what terror and stupefaction it produced! At first I was absolutely thunderstruck. What? Had what I had just read really happened? Had some man had the audacity to penetrate? Oh, no, I cried, leaping to my feet. My uncle mustn't know about this. It would be the last straw if he got to hear of a journey of this sort. He would want to follow suit, and nothing would stop him. He is such a fanatical geologist. He would set off in spite of everything, and he would take me with him, and we should never come back. Never, never. I was in a state of indescribable agitation. No, it shall not be, I declared, and since it is in my power to prevent such an idea from entering my tyrant's head, I shall do so. If he kept turning this document over and over, he too might discover the key. The only thing to do is destroy it. There was a little fire still burning in the hearth. I picked up not only the sheet of paper, but also Saknussemm's parchment, and with a trembling hand, I was about to fling them both into the fire and destroy the dangerous secret when the study door opened and my uncle appeared. And that's the end of chapter 4. What's going to happen? Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bedtime Stories. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the library's YouTube channel. You can also find out what's happening at the library by visiting us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Or you can always just go to the library's website. I hope to see you again for the next episode of Bedtime Stories. But until then, be well and sleep well.